Imagine being 40,000 feet above the Atlantic Ocean, responsible for someone else's fortune, when you realize you're working for a killer. That's exactly where Isabella Torres found herself in March 2023, listening through the thin cabin wall as her passenger, Viktor Kozlov, spoke casually about eliminating witnesses. Miners who had discovered something too valuable for their own good. People whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where doing the right thing meant breaking the law? Where your moral compass pointed in a direction that could land you in prison, or worse? Because that's the impossible choice Isabella and her husband Marcus faced. They weren't career criminals. They were pilots, trusted by the ultra-wealthy to transport their most precious cargo across the globe. Their reputation was built on discretion, professionalism, and never asking questions. But when you discover that those precious cargo cases contain not just $750 million worth of rare diamonds, but blood on every stone, what do? Do you keep flying, keep your mouth shut, and become complicit in murder? Or do you take matters into your own hands? Marcus and Isabella chose option 3. They created their own justice. In one of the most audacious heists in aviation history, they turned a routine flight into an international manhunt that spanned 18 months, 12 countries, and raised a question that still haunts investigators today. Was this the result of meticulous planning by two brilliant minds, or were they simply the luckiest criminals who ever lived? The answer will shock you, challenge everything you think you know about justice, and leave you wondering what you would have done in their place. If you've ever wondered how far you'd go to escape a dangerous situation, hit that subscribe button. This story will blow your mind. Because sometimes, the most extraordinary crimes happen in the most ordinary moments. And sometimes, the line between hero and criminal isn't a line at all. It's a choice made in the blink of an eye, with consequences that echo around the world. To understand how two ordinary pilots pulled off an extraordinary heist, you need to know who Marcus Vale and Isabella Torres really were. Because their story isn't just about stealing diamonds, it's about how two completely different worlds collided to create the perfect criminal partnership. Marcus Vale grew up watching planes cut through the Colorado sky from his family's modest home in Denver. While other kids dreamed of being astronauts or firefighters, Marcus knew exactly what he wanted: to fly. He worked 3 jobs through flight school, spent 4 years in military aviation, and climbed the ladder of commercial airlines 1 flight hour at a time. By 2018, he'd finally made it to the top, piloting private jets for the ultra-wealthy. But Marcus remained the same humble guy from Denver, still amazed that he got paid to do what he loved. Isabella Torres couldn't have been more different. Born into Brazilian aviation royalty, she practically grew up in airplane hangars. Her father's charter service flew politicians, celebrities, and business moguls across South America. By 16, she was logging solo hours. But more importantly, she understood these elite passengers, their habits, their paranoia, their secrets. Where Marcus saw wealthy clients, Isabella saw patterns. She knew when someone was nervous, when they were lying, when they were dangerous. When they met at FlexJet's Miami training facility, the chemistry was immediate. Marcus was transitioning to larger aircraft while Isabella was getting her international certification. He brought technical precision and absolute integrity. She brought street smarts and an insider's understanding of high-stakes transactions. Within 6 months, they weren't just flight partners, they were lovers. Their small wedding in Key West was attended by just 12 people, but their professional partnership was witnessed by the world's elite. Platinum Aviation Services quickly recognized their value. Marcus's reputation for safety combined with Isabella's ability to handle delicate situations made them the preferred crew for repeat clients. They flew tech billionaires to secret meetings, transported art collections worth hundreds of millions, and carried briefcases full of cash to offshore banks. But their different backgrounds created more than just professional success. They created complementary skills that would prove crucial when they faced their impossible choice. Marcus's methodical planning and Isabella's ability to read people and exploit weaknesses would soon become the foundation of one of history's most daring heists. Neither of them wanted to be criminals. But when faced with working for a killer, their unique combination of skills made them perhaps the only 2 people on Earth who could pull off what came next. Viktor Kozlov wasn't just another wealthy passenger. He was a man who built his empire on blood and broken promises. Rising from the chaos of post-Soviet Russia, he transformed state-owned mining operations into his private diamond kingdom spanning 3 African nations. By 2023, Kozlov Minerals controlled massive operations in Botswana, Angola, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. But intelligence agencies suspected the legitimate business was just a front. Money laundering, arms dealing, political corruption. Kozlov's tentacles reached into every dark corner of international trade. Paranoid by necessity, Kozlov trusted no one completely. He never flew commercial, never used the same route twice, and never, ever shipped his most valuable cargo through traditional channels. That's where Marcus and Isabella came in. For 2 years, they'd been his preferred crew, flying him on missions that officially never happened. Meetings in the Cayman Islands, mysterious pickups in West Africa, deliveries to unmarked private airstrips. They maintained perfect silence about his affairs, which is exactly what Kozlov paid for. But this latest cargo was different. The 5 aluminum cases didn't contain ordinary diamonds. They held rare pink and blue stones from a newly discovered Botswana mine. Gems so exceptional they'd never see a traditional market, destined instead for private collectors in Hong Kong who asked no questions about provenance. $750 million worth of Earth's rarest treasures, locked in biometric cases that only Kozlov could open. Each stone represented not just immense value, but something darker, the blood of miners who'd discovered them, workers who'd asked too many questions, witnesses who'd seen too much. Kozlov chose Marcus and Isabella because they embodied everything he needed: skill, discretion, and just enough moral flexibility to look the other way. They'd proven themselves trustworthy with sensitive cargo before. What he didn't account for was their conscience. What none of them knew was that this routine flight would become a turning point. The man who trusted no one had finally placed his faith in the 2 people who would betray him. And the pilots who'd built their reputation on never asking questions were about to learn an answer that would change everything. The first crack in their professional facade happened during a layover in Dubai. Isabella stood beside Marcus, watching Kozlov's security team carefully unload several unmarked cases from their aircraft. The desert heat shimmered around them as she made what seemed like an innocent observation. "You know what?" Isabella said with a playful smile. "We could just keep flying. Take all of this and disappear to some tropical island where no one would ever find us." Marcus laughed it off. "Right. And spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders." But the seed was planted. Over the following months, their flights with Kozlov became increasingly suspicious. Meetings in the Cayman Islands with men in expensive suits and nervous expressions. Midnight pickups in remote West African airstrips where local officials were paid to forget what they'd seen. Flights that somehow never appeared in any official logs. Each mission chipped away at their peace of mind. They weren't just pilots anymore, they were enablers of something much darker. March 2023. The flight from Luanda to Geneva changed everything. Isabella was checking cabin systems when she heard Kozlov speaking Russian on his satellite phone. Her grandfather had taught her the language years ago, a skill she'd never mentioned in her employment file. The conversation froze her blood. "Dmitri, the miners in Sector 7 know too much," Kozlov was saying. "Clean it up. All of them. Make it look like an accident." He continued, detailing plans to eliminate witnesses, discussing logistics like he was ordering dinner. Isabella stood frozen, understanding every horrifying word. That night in their Geneva hotel room, Isabella told Marcus everything. They sat in silence for a long time, the weight of the revelation settling between them. "We're not just his pilots," Isabella whispered. "We're accessories to murder." Marcus stared out at the Geneva skyline. "What choice do we have? If we report him, who's going to believe us? And if we run?" "He'll find us," Isabella finished. "Or his people will." That's when the joke from Dubai stopped being funny. When they realized that sometimes the only way to escape a monster is to become something you never thought you could be. Comments below. What would you do if you discovered your employer was planning murder? Would you run, report it, or take matters into your own hands? Because Marcus and Isabella's answer would change their lives forever. And yours might surprise you. Plotting against Viktor Kozlov required more than courage. It demanded the kind of meticulous planning that would make military strategists jealous. For 8 agonizing months, Marcus and Isabella lived a double life, maintaining their professional facade while preparing for the most dangerous gamble of their lives. Isabella leveraged her family's deep Brazilian connections to create an invisible financial network. Her cousin Miguel, who worked in São Paulo's financial district, had contacts in every major bank in South America. Within weeks, they'd established a complex web of shell companies, each one legitimate enough to pass scrutiny, yet designed to disappear money into the maze of international banking. The names were carefully chosen: Tropical Aviation Holdings, Santos Maritime Services, Verde Import Solutions. Companies that sounded boring enough to avoid attention but sophisticated enough to handle massive transactions. Meanwhile, Marcus became obsessed with routes and radar coverage. He spent countless nights studying aviation charts, identifying the dead zones where aircraft could disappear for precious minutes. The South Atlantic had several such areas, remote stretches where radar stations were few and communication blackouts were common. Cape Verde emerged as the perfect target. Not only did Isabella have family ties to the islands, her grandmother had been born there, but the aviation infrastructure was just sophisticated enough to handle a G650 yet humble enough to be compromised. Carlos Mendoza, a mechanic at São Paulo's private terminal, owed Isabella's family significant favors. Her father had once saved his job during a corruption investigation. Now it was time to collect. Carlos could ensure certain maintenance records would show what they needed them to show. The most challenging part wasn't the technical preparation, it was the psychological toll. Every flight with Kozlov became an exercise in acting. Marcus had to smile at the man whose murder plans they'd overheard. Isabella had to serve drinks to someone whose hands were stained with innocent blood. They developed coded language for their planning. Vacation time meant discussing escape routes. Shopping lists were equipment needed for the heist. Wedding plans covered their exit strategy and new identities. The hardest part was the waiting. Marcus would lie awake calculating fuel loads and flight trajectories. Isabella would review financial documents, ensuring every transaction could be traced to a legitimate business purpose. They were preparing to steal from one of the world's most dangerous men, and one mistake would mean death, not just for them, but for their families. Yet they persisted, driven by the knowledge that doing nothing made them complicit in murder. They weren't becoming criminals by choice, they were choosing the only path that let them sleep at night. By October 2023, everything was in place. Shell companies ready to receive funds. Routes mapped to remote locations. Contacts paid and positioned. Fake diamonds prepared. All they needed was the right flight. They didn't know it yet, but that flight was just days away. October 15, 2023. 11:47 p.m. Luanda's Quatro de Fevereiro airport hummed with the quiet efficiency of late-night international aviation. For Marcus and Isabella, this wasn't just another flight, it was the culmination of 8 months of preparation. Kozlov arrived precisely on schedule, flanked by his two-man security team. The sight that made Isabella's breath catch wasn't his usual paranoid demeanor, it was the 5 aluminum cases, each one secured with biometric locks that responded only to Kozlov's fingerprints. $750 million. More money than most people could comprehend. And every cent covered in blood. Alexei Petrov, Kozlov's security chief, conducted his standard pre-flight inspection. For 12 minutes, he examined every inch of the aircraft. Hidden compartments, unusual modifications, anything that might compromise their security. He found nothing unusual, because there was nothing to find. The first 4 hours proceeded exactly as planned. Kozlov retreated to his private cabin to review documents for his Macau meeting. Petrov and his partner maintained their careful watch, rotating positions hourly. Isabella maintained regular contact with air traffic control, her voice calm and professional. Marcus kept their heading steady, flying over the dark waters of the West African coast. To anyone monitoring their flight path, everything appeared routine. At 3:52 a.m., approximately 800 miles west of Morocco, Marcus initiated the sequence they'd rehearsed dozens of times. A few subtle adjustments to the cabin pressurization system. Nothing dramatic, just enough to trigger an alert. "Isabella," Marcus said, his voice carrying just the right note of concern. "We're showing irregularities in cabin pressure." She responded immediately, checking backup systems while alerting Petrov to the developing situation. Within minutes, a second system began showing problems. The engine fuel line sensors indicated a potential leak. What happened next was a masterclass in aviation emergency management and deception. Marcus declared an emergency, his voice steady as he contacted air traffic control. Luanda Control, this is Platinum 77. We have multiple system failures and are declaring an emergency. The nearest suitable airport was Roberts International in Liberia, but that would mean flying back toward the African coast, over well-monitored airspace. Instead, Marcus made the decision that would change everything. "We're diverting to Cape Verde," he announced. Gil NS Airport has the capabilities we need, and it's the closest safe option given our current system status. Have you ever been on a flight where something went wrong? Let us know in the comments, but I guarantee it wasn't anything like this. In the cabin, Kozlov accepted the decision without question. Emergency diversions were part of aviation reality, especially on long flights over remote areas. His security team remained alert but showed no suspicion. After all, both pilots had proven their reliability dozens of times. As the Gulf Stream banked toward Cape Verde, Isabel caught Marcus's eye in the cockpit mirror. After 8 months of planning, they were committed. There was no turning back now. Below them, the dark Atlantic stretched endlessly. Above them, stars witnessed what would become one of the most audacious thefts in history. And in just a few hours, 5 aluminum cases would become the center of an international manhunt. The perfect crime was about to begin. Or was it just about to unravel? Cape Verde at 4:23 a.m. was exactly what Marcus and Isabella needed. Isolated, understaffed, and thousands of miles from major law enforcement resources. As the Gulf Stream touched down on the single runway of Gil NS Airport, they knew they'd chosen their battlefield perfectly. What made Cape Verde ideal wasn't just geography, it was politics. This small island nation had limited resources for investigating complex international crimes. Their police force excelled at handling local disputes and minor smuggling, but a sophisticated heist involving Russian oligarchs? That was far beyond their expertise or jurisdiction. More importantly, Isabella had spent her childhood summers here visiting her grandmother. She knew the local customs, spoke the Creole dialect, and understood how business was conducted on the islands. When you needed something done quietly, you knew exactly who to approach. The emergency landing protocol worked in their favor. As per international aviation law, aircraft carrying high-value cargo required thorough safety inspections before being cleared for takeoff. This gave them a legitimate window of approximately 2 hours while local mechanics examined the aircraft systems. During this window, several crucial events aligned like clockwork. Kozlov was escorted to the VIP lounge, where airport staff provided him with secure communications to contact his associates in Macau. The delays frustrated him, but emergency diversions were part of international flying. There was nothing suspicious about standard safety protocols. Petrov remained with the aircraft initially, maintaining visual contact with the cargo. But after an hour of watching mechanics run routine diagnostics, he made a decision that would prove costly. The local airport offered excellent coffee and clean restrooms, something not always guaranteed at remote airfields. 4:45 crucial minutes. Petrov left his post. Airport surveillance later showed him in conversation with local officials, sharing stories about previous emergency landings, completely relaxed. He had no reason to suspect anything. Marcus and Isabella had been Kozlov's trusted crew for 2 years without a single incident. During those 45 minutes, the maintenance inspection provided perfect cover. Local mechanics worked openly on engine diagnostics while Isabella coordinated with the specialists who had conveniently arrived to assess the pressurization issue. To external observers, everything appeared entirely professional. The beauty of Cape Verde was its simplicity. No sophisticated surveillance networks, no real-time passenger and cargo tracking systems, no immediate communication with international law enforcement agencies. By the time anyone realized what had happened, the perpetrators could be thousands of miles away. Everything that had worried them during months of planning now worked in their favor. Cape Verde's isolation meant limited flights in and out, perfect for controlling who witnessed what. The small staff meant fewer people to coordinate with or avoid. The relaxed pace of island life meant no one questioned why emergency repairs were taking longer than expected. As the first hour passed, Kozlov remained preoccupied with business calls, while Petrov enjoyed what he later described as the best coffee in West Africa. The pieces of Marcus and Isabella's carefully constructed plan moved into position like a Swiss watch. What happened next would transform an isolated island emergency into the focal point of an international crime that would capture headlines for months to come. The perfect storm wasn't just the weather conditions that justified their diversion. It was the convergence of opportunity, preparation, and flawless execution. The most audacious theft in aviation history took exactly 11 minutes and 43 seconds. Sometimes the most elegant crimes are the simplest ones. Miguel had arrived in Cape Verde 3 days earlier, posing as a Brazilian businessman exploring renewable energy investments on the islands. His luggage contained 5 aluminum cases, identical down to the serial numbers to Kozlov's. The investment story was perfect cover. Wealthy Brazilians frequently scouted opportunities in Cape Verde's growing economy. The cases had been manufactured by the same Swiss company that produced Kozlov's, purchased through a legitimate security firm in São Paulo. Inside, high-quality synthetic diamonds, good enough to fool a quick inspection, worthless compared to the originals. The biometric locks were identical models, programmed to respond to temporary fingerprint overlays that would dissolve within hours. At 5:17 a.m., exactly as planned, Cape Verde's airport experienced a brief power fluctuation. These happened regularly on the islands. The aging electrical grid was prone to morning surges as businesses opened. This particular fluctuation lasted just long enough for the cargo area security cameras to reset their recording systems. During those precious minutes of visual blackout, the maintenance team gained access to the cargo hold. Marcus coordinated from the cockpit, monitoring communications while Isabella guided the swap from inside the aircraft. The real cases were removed with professional efficiency, replaced with identical fakes. The synthetic diamonds weren't random fakes. They were carefully chosen to match the approximate size and color of Kozlov's inventory. If someone glimpsed inside a partially open case, they would see pink and blue stones that looked convincingly real. Only detailed laboratory analysis would reveal their true nature. While the switch occurred, Marcus performed his part of the deception flawlessly. The repairs he made to the pressurization and fuel systems were exactly as subtle as the damage he'd caused. Within 20 minutes, all systems showed normal operation. The problems had been fixed, the aircraft was airworthy, and departure could proceed on schedule. Meanwhile, the real cases had already left the airport grounds, transported in a maintenance vehicle to a waiting cargo ship docked at Porto Grande. By the time Kozlov's aircraft was cleared for takeoff, his fortune was already crossing international waters. The entire operation succeeded because of its elegant simplicity. No violence, no dramatic confrontations, no complex technology. Just preparation, timing, and the oldest trick in the book, sleight of hand performed on an international scale. When Petrov returned from his coffee break at 6:02 a.m., everything appeared exactly as he'd left it. The cases were secure, the biometric locks gleamed unchanged, and both pilots were focused on preparing for departure. He had no idea that $750 million had just vanished into thin air. 6 hours after landing in Cape Verde, the Gulfstream G650 lifted off for Macau. Kozlov, though irritated by the delay, had no reason for suspicion. Emergency diversions were part of aviation reality, and his pilots had handled everything professionally. For 18 blissful hours, Marcus and Isabella's perfect crime remained undetected. The biometric locks still worked flawlessly, the cases showed no signs of tampering, and Kozlov's documents remained exactly where he'd left them. Everything appeared completely normal. But perfection has a shelf life. The moment of truth came in a private viewing room in Macau's most exclusive diamond district. Kozlov's buyers, wealthy collectors who valued discretion above all else, began their authentication process with practiced efficiency. The first synthetic diamond under the jeweler's loupe revealed the deception immediately. Where they expected to see the unique inclusions and fire of natural Botswana stones, they found the telltale signs of laboratory creation. "Mr. Kozlov," the lead appraiser said carefully, "I believe there's been some mistake." What followed was 18 months of international headlines condensed into 18 seconds of pure rage. Kozlov's legendary temper erupted as he realized the magnitude of his loss. $750 million. Gone. The sophisticated fakes were revealed completely. Beautiful synthetic stones that had cost perhaps $50,000 to produce, substituted for gems worth more than most countries' annual budgets. But the ultimate discovery was yet to come. When Kozlov's security team rushed to ground Platinum Aviation's offices in Miami, they found nothing. Marcus and Isabella's apartment was empty, their personal belongings gone, their employment records ending exactly 6 hours after the Cape Verde landing. They hadn't just stolen the diamonds, they'd vanished into thin air. No forwarding address, no final paychecks collected, no trace of where they'd gone. It was as if two people had simply ceased to exist. The perfect crime was complete. The question now wasn't how they'd done it, but whether they could stay hidden long enough to enjoy it. The international manhunt that followed became one of the largest financial crime investigations in history. Brazilian federal police, Interpol, FBI, and intelligence agencies from 12 countries collaborated in tracking Marcus and Isabella's elaborate escape route. The money trail was a masterpiece of financial engineering. Investigators discovered a network spanning continents, shell companies in Panama, holding accounts in the British Virgin Islands, cryptocurrency exchanges in Singapore, real estate investments in Argentina. Each transaction was perfectly legal in isolation, but together they painted a picture of sophisticated money laundering. By the time authorities understood the full scope of the operation, an estimated $630 million had been successfully laundered and hidden across dozens of accounts and investments worldwide. For 18 months, Marcus and Isabella lived as ghosts. Occasional sightings placed them in Paraguay, Argentina, even back in Cape Verde, but none were confirmed. They had become legends in criminal circles, the couple who outsmarted one of the world's most dangerous men. Kozlov's response was predictable and terrifying. He placed a $50 million bounty on their heads, attracting bounty hunters, mercenaries, and criminal organizations from around the globe. The reward was so massive it created its own underground economy of people searching for the missing pilots. The break came from an unexpected source. In March 2025, Brazilian authorities intercepted communications suggesting the couple was hiding in Rio de Janeiro, living under assumed identities in the wealthy Ipanema district. The tip came not from professional investigators, but from a disgruntled cleaning service employee who recognized Isabella despite her altered appearance. At dawn on March 15, 2025, Brazilian federal police surrounded a penthouse apartment overlooking Copacabana Beach. The operation was swift and efficient. No dramatic chase, no shootout, no final confrontation. Marcus and Isabella were captured without resistance, calmly having breakfast on their terrace as if they'd been expecting this moment all along. 18 months of freedom had ended not with a bang, but with a gentle click of handcuffs and the sound of waves crashing against Copacabana's famous shore. The most audacious theft in aviation history was over. But the questions it raised were just beginning. The trial that followed raised uncomfortable questions that legal systems struggle to answer. Isabella's lawyers argued they had performed a public service, stealing from a man whose diamonds were purchased with murder. Marcus's defense claimed they were protecting themselves from becoming accessories to genocide. But where does vigilante justice end and common theft begin? Is stealing from a killer still stealing? Can two wrongs ever make a right? The diamonds Kozlov lost had been obtained through the systematic murder of miners who discovered them. Blood diamonds in the truest sense, each stone representing lives ended to maintain Kozlov's secrets. Yet despite this, the law remained clear. Theft is theft, regardless of the victim's character. Perhaps the most troubling lesson from their story is how easily good people can become criminals when pushed to impossible choices. Marcus and Isabella weren't career criminals or sociopaths. They were skilled professionals who found themselves trapped between becoming accessories to murder or committing theft themselves. Their case forces us to confront uncomfortable truths. In extreme situations, moral clarity becomes a luxury. When faced with truly evil people, the line between justice and crime blurs beyond recognition. What would you have done? Continued working for a killer, risking prosecution as an accessory after the fact? Reported him to authorities who might be corrupt or powerless against his influence? Or taken matters into your own hands, knowing it would destroy your life but might save others? The consequences of their choice echo beyond prison sentences. Even justified crimes carry a price. Marcus and Isabella saved lives by removing Kozlov's funding, but they also became international fugitives, living in constant fear, separated from family and friends. Their story teaches us that desperation can drive anyone to act outside the law. When normal channels of justice fail, when reporting crimes could make you a target, when staying silent makes you complicit, these are the moments that test our deepest values. Perhaps the real lesson isn't whether they were right or wrong, but that such impossible choices shouldn't exist. When legal systems fail to protect the innocent, when corruption allows killers to operate freely, ordinary people are forced into extraordinary decisions. Justice and law aren't always the same thing. Marcus and Isabella learned that saving lives sometimes means breaking laws, and accepting the consequences that follow. So was this the perfect crime or pure luck? The answer might surprise you. Intelligence reports suggest Kozlov's Macau buyers had planned to kill him and take the diamonds anyway. His Chinese contacts weren't collectors, they were members of a rival criminal organization looking to eliminate competition. By stealing his fortune, Marcus and Isabella may have inadvertently saved the life of the man they betrayed. The irony runs deeper. Only $200 million of the stolen diamonds have been recovered. Marcus and Isabella's lawyers claim other criminal organizations learned about the heist and took the remaining stones. Whether this is true or a convenient story to explain missing millions, we may never know. As of now, legal proceedings continue across multiple countries. Kozlov remains at large. Some suspect he met his end in the Russian underworld, others believe he's still hunting for his lost fortune. The case has become a web of international jurisdictions, extradition battles, and unanswered questions. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between perfect planning and incredible luck. Marcus and Isabella certainly prepared for an eventual heist, but the specific circumstances of their Cape Verde opportunity involved elements they couldn't have predicted. They created their chance, then seized it when the moment arrived. What's undeniable is that two unlikely thieves turned the world of high-stakes diamond smuggling upside down, proving that sometimes the most audacious crimes hide in plain sight, 40,000 feet above our heads. What do you think? Were Marcus and Isabella master criminals or accidental heroes? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true crime stories that will make you question everything you thought you knew about right and wrong. Remember, sometimes the most shocking crimes happen in the most unexpected places, even 40,000 feet above your head.